Is it okay if I leave my glasses on for everybody? It's a little bright out here.
Yeah, you're fine. Can you turn your left shoulder towards the laptop?
That?
Yeah, it's fine, Coach. Actually, you can stand normal. The shadows on your shoulder, it's no big deal. You're good.
Shadow on my shoulder?
Shadow on your shoulder.
If I turned it this way, no?
Nah.
Doesn't help?
No.
No?
No, you're good either way. You're good. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, Eric Olson with the Associated Press up in Omaha.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, I wanted to ask you kind of a general, for your observation. Congratulations on your retirement, by the way. I wanted to ask you just about your observations. There's a lot of talk coming into the season about how with fewer rounds in the draft and with the extra year of eligibility that came with the pandemic, that the game would be older and that the game would maybe the play would be elevated a little bit this year because of all that. Was that true in your estimation?
I think so, yes, Eric. I could tell you in the SEC, I felt that the Southeastern Conference this year was the strongest I've seen it, and every year it's strong. But from top to bottom in our league, I just felt that the quality of play was as good as it's ever been, and probably the best it's ever been. You know, but from team to team, it was a little bit different. You know, we still ended up having to play some really young players, albeit they were really good players. They may have been the best players on our team. You know, when you look at players like Trey Morgan and Dylan Cruz, they were probably our two best players. And I think that was attributed, quite frankly, to the fact that the draft was only 5 rounds. Those players may not have come to school had it been a longer draft. Not that they would have been drafted later, but I think because it was only 5 rounds, the organizations went more with college players than they did with high school players in the early rounds, and that forced more young players into college. And so we had, I think, more high-level young players. But I think players like A.J. Levis and Devin Fontenot, for example, on our team probably would not have been in school had there been a normal draft last year. And when you went around the league, there were a lot of older players that, you know, you were surprised to see them again, that typically they would have gone into professional baseball. So I think collectively, when you look at the big picture, there's no question that the quality of play was at a higher level this year because of the shortened draft last year.
Well, one follow-up, and you kind of touched on it. On the schedule that you guys played, as you looked out of the dugout, were there any particular teams that really this showed up a lot, that they are older and using that experience?
You know, to be honest with you, I don't. My mind's not clicking right now, thinking specifically about those teams, because my focus is looking forward to Gonzaga on Friday. But it seemed to me that Ole Miss, for example, had a really veteran team. Texas A&M had a really veteran team. Thought Arkansas had a really veteran team. You know, they just, you know, a lot of the better teams in the league seemed, their lineup-wise, just had a lot of veterans playing for them. We did not. You know, we were starting a lot of young players, but I think, again, that was the result of the short draft. You know, some of our best players were our young players. Jordan Thompson, our shortstop, was a freshman. Brody Dross played quite a bit. He's a freshman. But we had a couple of players signed last year as undrafted players, which kind of caught us off guard. You know, we didn't think, you know, players necessarily would have signed, you know, as undrafted players for the $25,000 limit, but yet a couple of players did. I don't blame them. They were a little bit older than a typical junior. So, you know, they ended up taking the opportunity and going, but it just made us become very young compared to our peers in the league.
Thank you.
Hey, Paul. Doug at WWL TV in New Orleans. I want to ask you one question about Trey Morgan. You've had a million great players. What is it about him that's special? And would it be safe to say that as young as he is, that he will grow into power potential?
Yeah, I think first of all, let me tell you, I've coached a lot of really great players, especially here at LSU, and I would put Trey Morgan right up there with all of the outstanding players that I've had here at LSU. He's special. There's no question about it, and I've told him that. He's one of the all-time best that I've had. I put him right up there with LeMahieu, with Bregman, with Duplantis, with the very best position players that I've had, and he's just so developed in his game. Not many players are as adept at hitting the ball to the opposite field or as willing to hit the ball to the opposite field as he is. Most players come up and they want to be so pull happy and try to hit home runs, but LeMahieu wasn't like that. Bregman wasn't like that. Duplantis wasn't like that. This kid is not like that. They're willing to take what the pitcher gives to them, and they hit the ball with authority to the opposite field. Makes them hard to strike out, and so they can hit whatever kind of pitcher that they're facing, whether it's a hard thrower, soft thrower, right-hander, left-hander. They get an idea of what the pitcher's trying to do to them, and they can adapt to what the pitcher is the way the pitcher's pitching to them. And Trey is right there with those guys. It's like an advanced approach that you just don't see out of a lot of 18-year-olds. He was well schooled before he ever arrived here to LSU. So that's him as a hitter. When he gets on the bases, he's got great instinct, and he's fearless. He wants to try to steal bases, and then he has great instinct in just running the bases. And then I've talked about his defense. Not a lot of young kids take the pride in their defense the way that he does. And he's a terrific first baseman. I mean, major league caliber first baseman, without a doubt. He's a tremendous athlete, and he takes such pride in it. So the last thing really that's going to come for him is going to be his power. Well, that was the last thing that came for DJ LeMahieu. It was the last thing that came for Bregman. Bregman didn't hit a lot of home runs at LSU, and look what he's doing in the major leagues. LeMahieu didn't hit a lot of home runs at LSU. Look what he's done in the major leagues. I think a couple years ago, LeMahieu hit 25. A couple years ago, Bregman hit 40. There's no question in my mind that as Morgan develops body strength and more experience and so forth, he's going to be capable of hitting home runs. I think the kid is a future major leaguer. I think he's a future major league star, quite frankly.
Paul, do you see him at first base for his career? And secondly, do you think that he has a relaxed confidence about him? That's kind of what I see, but I don't know if that's accurate.
I think he is a first baseman in the future because I just think he's such an asset over there. But this summer, I want him to go away and play in the outfield, only to gain experience as an outfielder and to increase his versatility. Perhaps that will help him in the draft, but if nothing else, it'll just give him a little more versatility so a major league manager will know that he doesn't just have to pigeonhole him at first base only. Obviously he's limited what he can do as a left-handed thrower. So he should gain experience as an outfielder. I don't know how good of an outfielder he'll be. He tells me his speed doesn't translate in the outfield as well as he is as a base runner, but I think he's just kind of being humble. My guess is he's probably a pretty good outfielder, but he can always come back and play first base and play it marvelously. So, I just think we played him at first base because to me, he was a difference maker there. And we had so many inexperienced infielders at second, third, and short that I thought he would save us 3 or 4 errors a game, which is exactly what he's done. So he was so valuable for us. We had to play him at first base. But for his sake, I think a little experience in the outfield is going to be good. But I think he's a major league first baseman. I told him I compared him to the former great Keith Hernandez. You remember, played for the Mets and the Cardinals. He impacted games with his defense as well as his bat. And I know that's a big comparison, but I think Trey Morgan is that caliber of a player.
Coach, are you seeing anything, just looking at Oregon and Gonzaga, are you seeing a trend with some of these West Coast schools and just how they go about offense or pitching? It just kind of looks like a different style of play than what you're used to in the SEC. I mean, are you seeing anything there?
Well, for years and years and years, the West Coast style of play was to do an awful lot of bunting, sacrifice bunting. You remember when Augie Garrido was at Fullerton and then he took his game to Texas. You know, he was known for sacrifice bunting all the time. But Gonzaga doesn't seem to play that game, and a lot of the West Coast teams have actually gotten away from that. They don't have an extraordinary number of sacrifice bunts, and they don't really have an extraordinary number of stolen bases either. They don't have an extraordinary number of home runs. The ball really doesn't carry that well out here on the West Coast, especially when they play night games. So what I see them is just a very scrappy group of baseball players that know how to play the game. You know, like I said, we've got our work cut out for us. They don't strike out a lot. I think they use the whole field. I think it's important that Marceau doesn't get frustrated if he doesn't strike a lot of guys out. And I don't think he should try to strike a lot of guys out, which means he doesn't need to try to make perfect pitches to try to get to a 2-strike count where he can then put guys away, because all it's going to do is run his pitch count up. And I hope he pitches to contact, and I hope we make the plays behind him and have a little good fortune that they hit balls right at people, because if he can pitch us deep into the game and keep it as a low-run game, and we find a way to scratch our runs across their very good pitcher, you know, it's going to be a tight ball game, and we just got to find a way to win it at the end.
I saw that just looking at Oregon, they've only got one guy with double-digit home runs. Is that a comment on the park, or, I mean, is the air got more moisture out there so it doesn't fly as far? I mean, are we reading too much into that?
I think it's a pitcher's ballpark, especially at night. So they're playing the day game tomorrow. We're playing the night game. I haven't scouted Oregon that much because I'm so totally focused on Gonzaga for tomorrow. But the kid that has the double-digit home runs, you know, I coached him in the summer of 2018. I selected him for the collegiate national team, Kenyon Yovan, and I selected him as a pitcher. He was a pitcher on our team. But then he developed arm problems the next year here at Oregon. It's funny because he told me all summer that he was a good hitter. And I said, yeah. Come on, Yovan. Just get ready to pitch. And then I gave him one at-bat that summer against the Cuban national team in the last game of the year. In the last inning, the game was one-sided. And he got up there and he took 3 mammoth cuts and swung and missed 3 times and struck out. And I gave him such a hard time after the at-bat. And now here he's got 14 home runs for Oregon this year. I texted with him the other day. I'm sure he can't wait to give me a hard time and tell me if I would have let him hit that summer, what he would have done for our team. But, he's the only guy that's got double-digit home runs. So they're a pitching first team and again, another scrappy offensive team. But I haven't scouted them quite as much as I should have, just because I want to totally focus on Gonzaga first. We got to get through this team before we're going to play Oregon. Hopefully we'll play Oregon in the second game.
Does McHale have a better chance because of kind of that style of ball that you're alluding to? That you get a little swing and miss, or maybe they don't square them up as much?
I'm sorry. Is that Mike? I didn't quite understand.
Yeah.
You broke up a little bit.
Does McHale have a better chance against that kind of offense? Step outside. I'm
not sure who we're going to pitch in the second game at this point. If you're trying to reel me in there, Mike, it's not going to work. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah. All right.
I've been around you too long. 15 years is a long time, Mike. All right.
That wasn't my intention, but he talks, so I figure he'll pitch eventually this weekend. So. Nice.
You should know me better than that by now. Thanks for giving me a chuckle today, though.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I got one. Coach, being the fact that you were in the Corvallis Regional 3 years ago, kind of what have you kind of told the guys about playing, having to play on the West Coast, and what's some lessons that you learned from that regional that you can apply to this situation now?
There's really nothing to talk about. That was a completely different regional. We won 2 games out there. We just couldn't beat Oregon State. Oregon State was, the national champion that year, and they had an unbelievable team. They had 5 first-round picks on that team, including Adley Rushman, who I coached that summer with the USA team, and he was the number 1 pick a year later. He was the youngest player on that team. It was a completely veteran team of juniors and seniors. Adley was the youngest player, and he was the number 1 pick on the team a year later, the number 1 pick in the draft a year later. that was one of the best college teams you'll ever see put together. And we had beaten them 2 times the year before in the College World Series. And honestly, they were foaming at the mouth for another shot at us. And we had lost, Dykeman and Robertson and Freeman and Lang and Poche. I mean, we weren't the same club we were the year before, and they were, except a year older. And, we had them in the regional in 2012, and we had handled them pretty well. And we had beaten them twice in Omaha the year before, and now they finally had us at their place, and it was walking into the Lions' den. We had beaten San Diego State and Northwestern State, and we just didn't have the firepower to compete with them that year. So everybody talks about how it didn't go so well for us and how we had to travel across the country. The reality is they just had a much better team than us that year, and God bless them, and it wasn't our year, but this year is a totally different year. And, like I said, we got Gonzaga first. And after we play Friday, we'll see who our next opponent is. And I'm glad it's not the Oregon State team of 2018. Let's just put it that way. That's not to disrespect any of the other opponents that we might play this weekend. But that 2018 team was one of the better teams in the last few decades in college baseball.
Paul, you guys have, this is Scott Rabelais, all throughout the season, you've had this player go out of the lineup, or obviously you lose a pitcher like Beck or Hill or something like that, and you've had to adjust. And now you've gotten to the point where you've learned how to live without some of those pieces, and you've gotten some of those key pieces back. Talking to some of the players, they feel a little more confident. Like maybe they can, for the first time, show the kind of team that they think they should be. Do you have a sense of that as well in any way?
I would hope so, Scott. When you play 56 games, there's a lot of ebb and flow throughout the season, and this year as much as we've ever had. But players show what they have and who can be counted on and who's inconsistent. And I've been in this business a long time, as you know, and unless I just don't have any sense at all for what it takes to win, you start to figure out those guys that you can count on and those guys that you can't. And we're at that point now where I have a pretty good sense of what it takes and who we have and what our strengths are and what our limitations are. And the key is to put guys in situations that accentuate their strengths and kind of hide the weaknesses of our team the best that we can. That doesn't guarantee anything. The other teams are good. And at this point, you just got to go out there on a given day and give your team the best chance to be successful. And hopefully the young men that we put out there will go out there and play well. I mean, it sounds like coach speak, but that's really what it comes down to. And, we're going to motivate them the best we can, and we're going to go out there and let it rip and hopefully play loose and have a good night tomorrow night and then turn our attention to Saturday.
Paul, I got one more for you, if you don't mind. Just McNeese and Tech being in the I can't get a break from the noise. McNeese and Tech being in the tournament as well, the level of ball in Louisiana, how it's elevated, and I'm sure you're excited for both those guys knowing what they went through this season.
Well, I'm just so really proud of Justin and Lane and what they've done, dealing with the devastation in those two communities with the hurricanes and the tornadoes and everything that those two gentlemen have gone through, and for them to keep it together and rally their teams and their communities. They're both just outstanding people, first of all. They're outstanding coaches. Their kids have shown remarkable resiliency. The life lessons that they have learned through this adversity that they have had to go through. It makes me very emotional to think about what their communities have gone through and their teams have gone through. And for them to be standing at the end of the year and having the privilege of being in the NCAA tournament, they both earned it. Both programs, both coaches, both teams have earned it. And I'm just so happy for both of them. I'm proud of both of them. They have done our state very, very proud, and I wish them nothing but the very best, as well as Southern University. I hope Chris and his team go to Austin and, represent well and have a great experience for all the kids, all the coaches, and I hope LSU does as well. But I'm proud of all the teams from Louisiana. Okay? Let me go see if I can get our team ready. See you guys.
Thank you, Paul.